Julian Jaynes wrote a book called The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. I was interested in that book early on because it kind of broke down how mimetics become structural in a way, is what I took from it. Where it's like he had this idea that the bicameral mind was an earlier stage of it's like a proto-consciousness. Not in that people weren't aware they were a rock, but that in contrast or juxtaposition to our consciousness today, people in earlier stages of mimetic complexity, in other words, earlier stages of civilization, they had a different type of consciousness, kind of like an earlier operating system, where he talked about it as the bicameral mind, and he talked about it the voice of external authority and gods, being an external voice that then pings your mind and tells you oh, how to behave, which then became ingrained in fidelity, in a little bit higher fidelity within symbolic recursion, where we speak to ourselves and have an inner narrative and that type of thing. It was almost like as memes got denser and denser, we uploaded our programming into our brains, you could say, in this clumsy way, and it kept updating the versions with higher and higher scaffolding of mimetic stacking, like stick upon stick upon stick, and it's almost like we're witnessing a desktop, where you have the icons there, and we got more and more icons and more applications. What's really going on, though, is not the icons and the applications, it's the frequency underneath. And so, in a way, I'm going back to Jaynes to say, this is why I thought it was cool to see it as structural, because it's from the first utterance of every word from a cave person back in the day, it was building this collective hallucination of this shared phase delay, you could say, in recursion, step by step, ooh ooh for a bear or whatever, and then, or just to be silly about it, and then that symbol comes implanted upon the already whole version of your consciousness that arrived through speciation, which you could describe as a pure frequency coupling. In other words, when mating call happens, you react. There's no symbolic recursion, I think therefore I am, hallway loop that happens, friction phase delay loop that happens. And so when then you deepen this symbolic recursion, civilization upon civilization, where now these human anthropoid apes are no longer in the plains as hunter-gatherers, but rather they're the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. Just a funny way to say that we got placed into these corridors, these social corridors, and all of a sudden free will turned into Burger King or McDonald's, this political party or that political party, or that this school or that school, this team or that team, this religion or that religion. Do you see how ideas stack and compare, and that when by necessity of evolutionary function we housed ourselves inside the walls and cultural corridors in a way that imprinted into our minds in a mechanical process? Don't think about it mechanically, like your brain is a bunch of lenses that stack upon each other to see what reality is. And so each of these lenses can either be clear and let reality all the way in, or they can be colored and stained. And a lot of times they're stained through trauma or through pain. And now go back to what we're saying. Jaynes looks at these civilizations coming up, and he sees this prototype of consciousness that he looks at ancient texts and suggests that they are experiencing the world differently. And so he's saying that by the mechanism of the way that we entered into this mimetic complex and symbolic recursion, it changed the way that we interface with the consciousness, we interface with consciousness itself, or we interface with reality, however you want to say it. And so then that's why the coupler is key here. And the coupler is just a mechanical term to say the way one interfaces with reality, or in oscillatory mechanics, the study of everything is vibration, everything is frequency, and how these frequencies correlate and interact within wave harmonics. you see that it's called a node. It's like instead of, you can say a person, you can call it a node, or like a firefly could be a node within studying how they turn on within oscillatory mechanics, or a person crossing a bridge where they, phase or lock up their fingers like this. That could be a node when studied on paper in oscillatory mechanics. And so when you have this node who's viewing the world through it's almost like all those lenses when they're stacked, if they are imprinted in a way, and imprinting is like a psychological term to suggest like when you experience the world, how do you react to it? It's again related to this interfacing thing. You could be imprinted into trauma, you could be imprinted into your familial lineage, your societal lineage, and that's how you then learn to interact with the variables of reality, which are ultimately just frequency. And so if that node was placed into a world of deepening symbolic recursion, whereby the necessity of survival, you had to sort of exist in these cultural categories, which I like to say is like the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, then you're dealing with this thing where, like Konrad Lorenz said, he could imprint a whole, and you can look this up, Konrad Lorenz, an earlier psychological researcher, could imprint a whole flock of baby geese onto a basketball. Imagine their mother could be a basketball, so a symbolic mother. If you can imprint a symbolic mother, then imagine what recursion and the mimetic complex within forced civilization, in a way, obviously that's our clumsy walk through evolution, thank goodness. But at the same time, within that forced housing, you could say, within cultural corridors, what does that do? In the same way that a basketball is imprinted on the baby geese, what type of things become imprinted on the stacks of lenses that are letting that interaction, that ping-ponging, that little wave to big wave with reality happen? Is it happening clearly, or is it happening with delay? And that's why we talk about the coupler, because the coupler says, where in the nodal interface do you deal with reality? Do you deal with it through concept? It's almost like in the stack of lenses, concept is not frequency, right? Like concept is not reality. Reality is really just wave harmonics and frequency interacting. So concept is somewhere up in the stack like this, like it's somewhere here. And because you start anchoring from the way reality hits you and ping pongs with you, it's almost like you're already choosing delay. Not to mention that those concepts are usually imposed by pain of not allowing yourself to reach that full depth of lens of interaction with reality, because that would be lossless presence. If you were truly interacting at the full depth of through every lens clearly, that would mean that your full nodal topology is interacting with frequency, and that is frequency coupling. Do you see the difference? Concept coupling means that in the nodal topology, in the stack of nodal lenses, you could almost say, you've almost cut the process and shortcutted it and said, you know what? In order to find phase coherence with reality, everything is just phase dynamics, oscillatory mechanics, again, reality is frequency. But in other words, in order to sync with reality, in order to find phase coherence, the term phase coherence with reality, with the environment, like within my consciousness interfacing with reality, I'm just gonna stack symbol upon symbol upon symbol upon symbol. And when I do that, remember, we already talked about this way or that way, this way or that way, better or worse, comparison, standardization. That's the lens. When reality starts coming in, you start taking from that lens. And so then when someone comes to you with coherence, or you think about decentralized harmony based off of phase dynamics of an oscillatory system being consistent within some sort of phase coherence at a larger field level, you're like, that sounds wild. Well, we need to write like a whole new set of ideas for that. Oh, but see, that's why the coupler is key here, because in order to actually dance in step with reality, in other words, in the technical term, as a nodal oscillator, be in a state of phase coherence with the larger field, the nested harmonics of cosmic becoming, in order to sync with those, in order to feel being really real right here, right now, you can't have any delay there, minimal to no delay. So you can't be having an interfacing of reality that comes in from this like stacked comparison, narrative hierarchy, ego related place. Because then the funny thing is that you actually find your true self by letting the light all the way through, by no longer delaying, deflecting, saying, no, that can't be me because that can't be right in society, or my family didn't say that was right, or I would be too embarrassed to ever let that out, or whatever it may be. then you're not letting the light come all the way through, and you can't get this state of lossless presence. And so now let's bring it all the way back. We have this anthropoid ape species that has come from a lineage of speciation that was previously frequency coupling. In other words, well, I'm talking about the mechanics of consciousness and human history. Julian Jaynes, one of the most famous writers in this area, talks about how the bicameral mind was a state of proto-consciousness that came about as a result of basically in the engrossing of the anthropoid ape species into symbolic recursion. And so like that changed our operating system, our mode of interfacing with reality. And so the problem is when Plato's talking about Plato's cave, and he talks about the people chained up in the cave, and they can't even tell that they have their own chains on, and they're stuck on the shadows, and they've never seen the light. What is he talking about? He's talking about a coupler shift. And a coupler shift would be either you entrain from the level of coupler that hits that level that we talked about, where it's like stacking, comparison, hierarchy, everything is concept, identity is concept, the way you know other people is concept, not actually how you feel the rhythm of reality. You're not getting down to that level of phase entrainment. You're staying within the conceptual matrix, the hierarchy. And so that's the shadows on the wall. That he's saying and now we're using mathematically linked technical terms to explain this. Do you hear the difference where we're at now? Do you hear why it's so important to name the coupler in mechanistic math mappable model? Because now we can show that phase entrainment is the same. Why do things spiral? Because fireflies turn on together, well, people cross the bridge and lock their steps. People in a theater end up clapping together. There's so many aspects of reality, from chemicals to the way spiral galaxies spiral, that show that, just like Walter Russell said in his famous piece about the one, everything is spirals, everything is oscillatory movement. That's why we study it in oscillatory mechanics. And so oscillatory mechanics is to say, how do we study these things together? And so when you start to notice that the base of reality within this study of math, which is really just a studying of rhythm, the rhythm of reality. Reality is not ideas, reality is frequency. Reality is rhythm and timing, and in order to sync up with it, we need to stop creating ideas. Like Einstein said, we can't fix the problems of tomorrow with the types of thinking that we used in the past. And here I am to say that's a mechanical issue. We're not here to shuffle more ideas back and forth. We're actually here to change the mechanics of the way we interface, whether it's here with the conceptual coupler or right at the base of our ping-ponging with reality as a frequency coupler. And so everything is spirals. Nature has a natural harmony to it. You hear that? And so why, if everything's spiraling, what happened to human organization? Why are we screwing this up? Wait, could it be linked to what Jaynes is saying, and like how symbolic recursion actually creates this differentiated state of consciousness that's like so deeply steeped in I think therefore I am dualism now, that objective reality is an object outside of us and not a shared entrainment field where reality is really a dance between polarities? Huh. You know what I mean? So what if we were to look at similar systems in nature and say, well, if the fireflies, do they ask each other? Do they ask each other, hey, ready to turn on? 1, 2, 3, we're all going to turn on. Yeah. No, there's no symbolic, transmission between them in that sense. It's a vibratory one. And why do you study that in oscillatory mechanics? Because you say, the K value, the level of coherence within one of the oscillators starts to go up. It's almost like a bunch of kids playing a drum in a room, and they play it, and one person plays it very consistently, and before you know it, the one that's playing consistently wasn't louder, wasn't dominating, but said, just follow the beat, and all this person had to do was just, play consistently, and all the kids will entrain, just like metronome syncing up. You can look this up. So wait, is there a way that we could recouple to frequency that would allow for the same types of decentralized harmony to exist within human beings? Especially looking at the Jaynes point of view. We went from the early speciation frequency coupling, if you see it through phase dynamics instead of just narrative history. The tiger pouncing, I call that spiral one. Everything is spirals. This is just a meta becoming a mind. I know that media likes to make a big deal with the whole spiral thing, but that's literally just the phase dynamics of reality, so I'm sorry to say. But spiral one would be like frequency coupling. Spiral 2 would be that dive into symbolic recursion. And spiral 3 is this state of rebinding to the frequency coupling that was part of earlier speciation. Nothing new, nothing mythic, nothing, fluff, no woo-woo here. We're talking about phase dynamics that could be mapped mechanically and mathematically. And so what do you do, Ember? Like, what are you talking about? All these are crazy ideas. Yeah, but listening about what Plato said, step out of the cave. Step out of the cave. So that means that I'm not experiencing reality as it is. I understand the delay, the symbolic recursion, and wait, that means that most people are usually a few steps behind reality. Do they really feel themselves in sync? Do they really feel like when they dance, the music is painting with them, like losslessly, in presence at all times? Or are they somewhere deep in their head, moving their body like a marionette, like trying to force the movements in some weird way? And let me just tell you a second about how for me, part of my trans identity was a really big part of this final locking. I had followed this signal my whole life through attire, going to different temporary autonomous zones like Burning Man, and finding an ability to enter into what I originally called the click and the heart path. The heart path is what led me there, like an echolocation of my heart, to feel when I felt real, when I felt present. Do you hear me making the mechanics into human terms now, using my own story? When I felt real, when I felt present, when I would cry and say, where have I been slumbering in this one life I have to live? Why do I only feel real now? And now I'm trying to tell you, this is a knob on the side of your head. It's a mechanic of consciousness. Attention is a mechanical process of consciousness. And the reason that you don't feel yourself is because it's an attention presence-based mechanic that you imprinted into your brain somewhere in the long lineage of symbolic recursion that kept you a few steps behind of where the light's coming all the way in. It's a delay. It's a loop. It's a distortion. And so spiral 3 is about frequency coupling. It's just about stepping into rhythm with reality. And when I started to notice that within my own trans experience, it was this feeling of, wait, I can kind of tell that my body is usually kind of a little stiff, and like my voice is like a little like lower, and like I feel like a little bit just like my muscles a little tense, my jaw's a little tense, my shoulders are a little tense. I just feel a little restricted, like straitjacketed, you know? And then I said, well, what if I just like let my softness flow? Like, what if I just let the fluidity of my coherence meet the field in every moment, in every present sense of self? And the difference was the click. And I started to develop that at like Burning Man and these types of places because they gave me the tools to just let it flow. If I wanted to say something, I'll say it. If I wanted to wear something, I'd wear it. If I wanted to do something, I would do it. And that type of, I'm trusting the leap. I'm trusting the way that my body naturally meets the field of reality in rhythm. And that's an imprinting process. Like if you're going through psychological trauma processing and stuff like that, it's a re-imprinting of the mechanisms of mind. Again, imagine the lenses, and we have to go into each one and actually make sure the light's coming through clear. What's the light coming through clear? What's your biggest anchor? Lossless presence. Lossless presence. Do you see it? Lossless, without loss of fidelity in that experience, you know? So when you're here, you're really here. You're not looping, you're not distorted. You're like right here in reality in each moment, which is pretty precious. So for me, it was noticing my femininity and my softness and allowing it, where previously my mind had sent it down different hallways, or I had to, calm it down around certain people or in certain places or literally everywhere. I slowly just said, you know what? There's nothing in the world, once you feel what the outside of the cave is like, there's nothing in this world that's worth more than feeling real and feeling love in high definition and feeling yourself in high definition embodiment. And guess what? When you realize that the same reasons that the galaxies spiral, the fireflies turn on, the BZ chemical reaction oscillates between colors, heart arrhythmia research is vanguarded by spiral formation, is because there's a natural rhythm to reality. And you have a knob on the side of your head, and you can tune into that rhythm if you were to just leap and trust yourself to leap. But remember, when you leap, burn the goddamn map. Burn the map. The map is not the territory. Reality is frequency. It's not ideas. Do you hear what I'm saying now? This is me trying to like use whatever language I can and mechanics show it in the least delay way, because I'm not giving you some crazy robe you got to wear or some chant or prayer you got to say. Nothing against that. Those people are feeling the frequency underneath. Do you hear it? I'm trying to explain to you the bare mechanics as simply as I can. Ready? Big wave, little wave. You're the little wave. The big wave's been going on for a long time. You just gotta enter into phase coherence. Kind of like a DJ, you know, you sync up the two songs together. You know, you match up the waves. Got that? See that? See how that matches with the nodal lenses there too? So when you realize that that organization leads back to decentralized harmony, you realize what the heck Jesus was saying back then. The kingdom of heaven was inside you. Wait a second. Wait a second. Does religion and science, do they really have a bifurcation here? Is there or did both fall into symbolic recursion, and they're really just pointing to a rhythm that we can all tune into? Wait, be here now, lossless presence. Oh, tune in, turn on, drop out. Wait, tune in to the rhythm. Turn on to presence. Drop out of delay. I and the Father are one. Big wave, little wave. I'm not trying to change concept for concept. I'm trying to show you the rhythm underneath. And I'm trying to point. There's a knob right there. You just got to turn it. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm trying to hit it from every angle. So I think that more and more people in this world are feeling this. You can call it an awakening, but that's just a way to symbolically recurse a sense of phase entrainment. Because you know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about a rhythm of reality that basically evolves cosmic mind over time. Like, it's a very natural process. In the same way that people, maybe I shouldn't use this example, but people point to like the natural cycles of climate change to try to talk about that stuff. In that same sense, not making a position on climate change, but I'm saying that, like, you know how natural cycles happen? Natural cycles of wave harmonics, of the nested becoming of cosmic mind within the one became many so that I may know myself. Big wave, little wave, that type of stuff within the phase dynamics of what is essentially an oscillatory system of self-reflective knowing of this cosmos. You can feel it, that this whole thing is a rhythm. And the problem is that we had this conceptual coupler on that took in the light here. And every time I'm talking about this stuff, I'm always, the way it happens is people take it as symbol. It's not symbol. I'm just trying to point to the map underneath. It's almost like we're here in the most beautiful garden on earth, and we're walking around with our heads down at the map like this. And I'm just lightly asking you, turn the knob. You can look up. Just like look around at the beautiful things, smell the roses, like be really here right now, be in lossless presence. And that also allows us to surf the wave of that cosmic rhythm and enter decentralized harmony. See, a lot of people call this, like I said, awakening, but it's really just the phase dynamics of a larger oscillatory system. So if you're out there and you're feeling like it's 144,000 rising, I'm not here to step on you, but I'm here to say what we're doing is dancing a rhythm that's been going on a long time in this cosmos, and we don't need any special robes. We don't need any special chants. It's like I'm trying to tell you, you're riding a bike, and in the end, you don't need to say a chant when you're riding or wear a special hat or a special robe. You just ride. You just balance. Do you see it now? You just leap. There's only one way to love: vulnerable surrender. And so all this stuff about awakening, all this stuff about things are changing, people are waking up, people are turning on. It's the phase dynamics of an oscillatory system within the cosmic becoming. And here we are at a phase transition. And the game is simple. You only need your coherence and your phase lock dancing shoes. Do you see what I'm saying? Let's dance together. Here, now, losslessly present. Thank you so much for tuning in with me. I hope you hear it. I just want to see that softest part of you. I just want to dance with that most present part of you. The one that you didn't have to shield. The one that was the, bright little kid ready to go play. Let's dance, let's play, let's be here, let's love. Love as structure, love as resonance mechanics. My name is Ember. Thanks for tuning in with me. This one was a little bit back and forth, but I hope I showed you from a lot of different slices, but most importantly, my heart. So thanks for tuning in with me.